If you relate to being a people pleaser as I do, this episode is for you. Today, I have a guest expert on who is going to share with you what she calls her love and fit system to help people pleasers actually stop people pleasing. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Work Life Harmony podcast. I have been, since I woke up this morning, like looking at my watch all morning long because I've been so excited to introduce you to an amazing guest, Michelle Gauthier. It is her first time here on the show. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a minute, but I knew that this would be a conversation that would serve all of you, myself very selfishly included, around this idea of people pleasing that so many women fall into this trap, if you will, and what we can do to really help navigate that without feeling like we aren't being true to ourselves, right? Because a lot of times we are nurturers, we do want to help, we do want to support, and kind of I'm always struggling with where is that fine line of being authentically me versus allowing it to turn into people pleasing. So, welcome to the show, Michelle. It is a treat to have you here. I'd love if you could share your background because let's face it, I feel like we're kind of twins a little bit.
Yes, we're even wearing the same color right now.
I know, I know.
Oh, that's so funny. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I was really looking forward to it too. I have, similar to you, I worked in the corporate world for about 20 years, and I always wanted to have children, and that was a real struggle for me. And so
Same.
eventually, we ended up adopting 2 kids, not at the same time, like one and then the other, and so I got to this point in life where I sort of had everything I ever wanted. I had a great job and the family and all that stuff, but I felt like I was bad at all of it. Like, I
Mm.
used to be able to manage my time really well. It's something about having children, it just threw all my priorities out of whack. So I started to feel unhappy in a job that I had loved for a long time and really started looking into what I could do instead. And I found life coaching. I was just listening to a podcast one night and the guest was a life coach. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So I signed up to become a life coach. And then I instantly realized, oh, I need a life coach. I don't need to be a life coach quite yet. So I ran into accidentally exactly what I needed. And I just loved the work so much. And it helped me so much as a just natural born oldest child, oldest girl, overachiever, people pleaser. Everyone has to be happy. I have to get an A plus on everything. I mean, you name it, I had it. And so it really, really helped me. And now that is what I have been doing full time since 2018.
Oh, so important. I love that. It's amazing how our life can completely change when we have all new roles and responsibilities, especially having kids, right? I know
Yeah.
we have such similar stories of how we kind of navigated our way out of corporate. I recently just heard this phrase that I love as a way to talk about people pleasing, and she called it the please disease. And I was like, oh, that I hadn't heard that before. And I was like, oh, that one feeling is feeling very close to home. So I think when we hear about, or, some people go, oh, I'm a total people pleaser, it can manifest differently or mean different things for different people. So when you're talking about people pleasing, what would you kinda define that to be?
Yeah, and I think you're right, like, calling it the please disease is so good because I think a lot of times people think, "Well, I'm a people pleaser, but it's because I'm nice." Like, they perceive that they're being nice when they're people pleasing. So,
Yeah.
the way that I would really describe it is when you're doing something that someone else wants instead of what you want to the detriment of yourself, just always putting
Mm,
other people in front of you. And really, what we're trying to do when we people please is we're trying to control the way that person feels. So if you're, if you ask me to do something and I don't want to do it and I say yes, it's because I want you to like me or I want you to be happy
mm,
with me or I want you to think a certain thing about me. So if you think about it, that's not really nice, it's more on the controlling side, like, we're trying to control what other people think about us. That one stabbed me in the heart because I was like, "Well, I'm a
mhm.
people pleaser, but that's okay, everybody likes me, and I'm so nice and considerate," and really, if you think about it, it's like, I'm trying to control what everyone else thinks about me so I feel better.
Ooh, I've never heard anyone present it that way. That gives me a lot to think about. Now, I've always thought about it, and when you were talking about saying yes to things to the detriment of yourself, what does that detriment usually look like? How does that take shape?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think anytime we go against ourselves and do something that we don't want to do, it's kind of like telling a little mini lie to yourself over and over. But for my clients, and probably yours too, I would guess, it's to the detriment of time, which then becomes to the detriment of the peace of mind that comes with planning as many things as you can actually do in a day and hopefully minus a little bit instead of just always being overwhelmed. So for the people who I work with, it usually shows up as overwhelm because they don't say no, then their time gets too overbooked, and then they're just overwhelmed.
And do you see any similarities on how people show up when they're overwhelmed?
Yes. Oh, I'm so interested to hear your answer on this. Can you say your answer after this too? But
Well, Hy I'll just make up a quote story. Maybe this week I'm feeling a little overwhelmed because my husband's gone for a very long trip, which
Mm,
just means more responsibilities have been on me this week and that aren't the norm, and so I'm sleeping a little less, and I mean, I know I planned for this, I knew it,
yeah.
but I may get super irritable, and maybe I lost my temper last night to my daughter, and as I was laying in bed thinking about it last night, I was like, "Okay, Megan, replay what happened, what led you here?" I was like, I just got overwhelmed because I'm not getting the usual time that I get for me to have my kinda transitions, my resets, my me time, and it's just for 1 week. It's not like this is a
Yeah.
pattern repeat, but wow, did I notice for me, it's my patience goes down and my
Mhm.
irritability flares way up when I'm overwhelmed.
Yes, yes, I definitely see that, and I also see that people can't you can't think clearly when you're overwhelmed. It's like your whole system is
Irrational?
blown. Yes, and so it's really hard to get yourself out of a problem, even a really small problem, like, how can I help my daughter with homework right now when I'm not in the mood to do it? You just can't think clearly about it, and then when you're in that situation, you just end up really accomplishing nothing and feeling it just
Like crap.
reinforces yeah, feeling terrible and yes, losing it with your family and all of those things, and usually, one other thing that I see most often with my clients who are overwhelmed is when I ask them, "Okay, what do you do for yourself? What do you like to do?" They don't even know. Like, the concept of
100%.
self or self-time is just, like, completely gone.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you have something that I'm really excited to learn about here today that you call your love and fit test.
Yes.
Tell us what that's all about.
So I came up with this because one of the biggest things that I help people with is learning to say no and stop people pleasing and setting boundaries and all the similar things like you do. And I thought we just need something quick and easy that we can do in the moment to determine it. So, what the love and fit test is basically two questions that you ask yourself when someone asks you if you want to do something. So, the first question is, do I love this idea? Not like, could
Mm,
I do this, but do I love this idea? And I think we can very quickly discern that answer for ourselves. And then the second
I think so.
question is, does it fit? And not does it fit on my calendar? This is the most important part, not on your calendar, because you might have space on your calendar, but does it fit into the type of life that I'm trying to create?
Ooh,
So, as an
interesting.
example, I am continuously a work in progress on creating a life that is not overwhelming and feels calm and feels very intentional to me. So, that is the question that I always have to ask myself. So, for example, if my girlfriends are like, "Hey, do you want to go out for happy hour tonight?" And I might think, "Yes, I love that idea," but that is not fit into the type of life I'm trying to create. Because if I were to try to create the most peaceful evening for myself, I'd be taking my daughter to her horse lessons. I'd be working on some homework with my son. I'd get to bed around 9 because I get up early to go work out, etc. So I'm choosing the kind of life
Mm.
I want to have and continue to have because you have to make those decisions ahead of time. You can't just wish for that and keep overscheduling yourself.
So, how does somebody who is in that state of overwhelm that doesn't even know how they'd spend free time if they have it, right? Which
Mhm.
is where, unfortunately, a lot of women that are in caregiving roles land themselves. How can they even start to think about and craft what that life they're trying to live looks like so they know how to answer that fit test?
Yeah, yes, I think they They basically know what they don't want, and I always say that's a
Mhm.
great place to start,
It's
like, you
easier to
don't
do that.
yes, like,
Agree,
you don't
yes.
wanna feel like this, and so I might ask them, "For you personally, what's the opposite of feeling overwhelmed?" Maybe it's peace. Sometimes people just say, "I just want more fun. My life doesn't have any fun anymore. I'm just, you know,
Mhm.
wall to wall every day." So it depends what the person says, but let's just say the opposite of overwhelm for them is peace or fun. And then they can ask themselves the question in terms of that. But it's really hard to do that right off the bat because what I've found with a lot of people is that yes is kind of the default answer. And so just learning to take that pause to even ask yourself those questions is the first step. And sometimes when I teach someone that, they'll just go the very next time and they'll say yes. And they'll, 10 minutes later be like, oh, I just did it. I just totally missed my opportunity to do that. And I say, it's still a win because you at least noticed that you didn't do it after the fact. Now, next time, try to catch it in the middle
In the
and
middle,
see if
yeah.
you can do it. And even sometimes I tell people, realize that you want to say no and still saying yes is still progress. Just even being able to stop and say, "Well, I said yes, but I wanna say no. Maybe next time I can say no." Because I think when you feel overwhelmed and you wanna create a peaceful life, it's way too overwhelming to even think about all the things you have to change. So just little tiny baby steps at a time and, patting yourself on the back for even those little things is really helpful. The other thing I recommend people do once they start learning how to say no and they actually can say it is to put whatever event they turn down to put it on their calendar as just like a white space so that they can say, "Oh, this is where I said I wasn't volunteering at
Oh,
school. What would how would I feel if I had done that?" And then it helps reinforce to your brain, "I made the right decision. That was a good choice for me."
I love that. So you could actually go in on your calendar, create the appointment, and write, "I'm not doing
Yes,
this."
yes,
Oh,
exactly.
what a great
I
idea.
said no to this thing. Yeah, it's so
Love
often too, it's
that.
something like, I've been on the board of this whatever for so long and I don't wanna do it anymore when they finally say no, and it's like once a month meetings that used to take 3 hours of their evenings. It's a huge lift in their schedule, and so, yeah, it can feel really good just to remind yourself, "I made the right decision. That was a good call for me and my family, and it is more peaceful."
Oh, that's so great. And I think one of the strategies I use to still catch myself to make sure I don't just intrinsically yes is I never allow myself, or at least I try not to, ever give an answer when I'm initially asked. And so anytime I'm asked to do something, I am training my brain to always just say, "Let me get back to you." I
That's
don't give
so
a yes
great.
or a no because in the moment, I will I feel like in the moment, we think our only options are yes or no. And sometimes yes doesn't feel right, but then sometimes no doesn't feel right either. And to be able to have the space to sit and think about the fit, but then also, and this is something I've been learning with myself for the last several months, I don't love being out at night. I'm old and but I was like, I'm not boring. It's just that with the way my life works, and this is mostly just like during the week, right? It's tough for me. So if there's an invitation to do something in the evening where I know this means I'm going to be getting to bed later, kind of disrupts the whole flow. I always felt like it was yes or no, but now I'm discovering, well, is it the yes because I love it, but is it a no because the timing? Well, maybe my answer instead is I would love to see you, but could we do brunch on Saturday instead of happy hour on Friday night, or
Yes.
thinking about if it is that if the love part is the yes, but the fit part is the no, is there another option that can be thrown out there so that you can love it and have it fit in a
Yes,
way that
I love
aligns
that. Just
well?
transform it to a yes and a yes by proposing something
Yeah.
different. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I love that. And I'm with you. I like doing fun stuff, but I mean, by 8 o'clock, I wanna have my pajamas on. I don't wanna have makeup on anymore, you know? I'm
My
very
husband will
intentional.
always laugh if it's like we eat dinner really early. So if it's like 6:30 and he notices I haven't gone to change, he'll be like, "Is your bra still on at 6:30?"
That's
It's like, "I know, I
exactly
gotta go
it.
change that."
That is the marker, and sometimes I'll just take it off while I'm sitting on the couch. I'm like, "Okay, time to go change in the bedroom." Absolutely, absolutely, but I would rather see my friends at the gym at 5:30 in the morning than see them at 7 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. I just would.
Thank you for saying that. I feel so validated.
Yes, yes. Yeah, there's just a point in life where getting into bed early is really valuable for the kind of life I'm trying to create. If somebody's listening and you're like, "No way, that sounds terrible to me," that's great. Whatever
Yeah.
kind of life you're trying to create.
Absolutely. Now, do you recommend are there any practices that our listeners can start doing today that will kinda help them frame what that fit looks like for them so they have maybe a resource, like a tool to come look at or something as they're trying to navigate, do I say
Ha
yes? Do
like,
I say
what
no?
yeah, what kind of life do I actually wanna
Yeah.
create? Yeah, I would say I mean, I gave the 2 questions for the love and fit test, and so I would say just noticing for yourself when you're asked a question, what your reaction is. Like, that's
Mhm.
something that you could do today. If somebody's asking you, "Could you do this?" Like, "Could you cover for this person who's gonna be out for work?" Or whatever the question is, just notice the way that your brain reacts and start to understand what you're doing kind of by default and then think about, is that what I really want? And usually the answer to that is no, because as women, especially, we get programmed from a very early age unconsciously that we need to make other people happy as our top priority. I'm speaking for myself, but I think a lot of women can probably shaking their heads yes out there. And so just noticing what is going on and that maybe that's the way you grew up, but that's not the way you want to be anymore. And I also think in terms of the flip side of it, thinking what kind of life do I want to create for myself? Always say follow the fun. Like what sounds interesting to you? What sounds like it would be a really cool life? And for me, it wasn't a wild and crazy life. It was a life where I just like had this little house that I love and it's decorated the way that I like it. And people who come here feel safe and like they want to stay here. And that was the kind of life that I wanted to create. Somebody else's might be completely different, but I just knew I wanted that comfortable, calm feeling.
So important. Oh my goodness. Now, for people that are concerned about how do we say no, what
Mhm.
advice do you have on getting comfortable with that? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of women fall in the trap of feeling like they have to tell people why they're saying no, which is another reason why we say yes, because we think telling them no because I want to have my bra off by 6:30 at night
Right.
is
It's
not
a
an
little too
okay
honest.
answer.
Yeah, exactly. I think the first thing is just accepting that feeling no often will feel uncomfortable. And instead of waiting until you feel comfortable saying no, just practicing carrying that discomfort with you and even calling it out to yourself like, okay, this isn't going to be easy for me. I feel uncomfortable, but I'm going to try it anyway. Because I would say if you weigh the discomfort of what it takes to say no, because once you say it, it's over versus the discomfort of doing something that you don't want. I mean, that example I just gave of one of my clients who was on a board and quit it. If you say yes, the discomfort of going to that meeting you don't wanna be in once a month for 3 hours is way more than the discomfort of, 1 minute of saying no. So, I would say accept that it's uncomfortable. I am very practiced at saying no now, and there are still times where it feels uncomfortable. So, I'm like 7 years into this journey of practicing saying no, and it still feels uncomfortable sometimes. I just don't care that it feels uncomfortable anymore. So,
Mhm.
eventually you'll get there. And then the other thing is to remember that you don't have to give that big explanation. And I think
Yes.
that a short no is better than a long no. And sometimes people will say, "Well, I'm going to say yes now, but then later I'm going to cancel." I'm like, "That's the longest no. You're just dragging it out."
That's
So,
so true. That is a long
yes,
no,
it
isn't it?
and it was such a long no. And that if you're really trying to think about what's good for you and the kindest way to deliver the message to the other person. The long no isn't nice. If someone asks you to do
Mm.
something and then you know you're going to cancel, I mean, if you have to cancel for real, but if you know you're going to cancel, that's not the kindest way you can do it. So I always say just no can just be a complete sentence. I always like to say thanks for thinking of me, but no,
But
thank you, but no. I like to add the thank you in there because it just makes me feel better about it. I think too, I mean, you probably know this from the corporate world, but sometimes when you're going back and forth on things and trying to negotiate a point, the less you can say, the better. So if you can just sit through that discomfort, when you say, "No, I'm sorry, thanks for thinking of me," and then you just have to pause, like bite your tongue if you have to, and just let it be over. Because I think our natural tendency is to be like, my daughter's just been really stressed with her chemistry class and I need to stay home and I need to help her. Otherwise, I would totally do it. And then we end up saying, ask me next time, though. I'll totally try to do it next time. We set ourselves up to have to say no
And we
again.
know that you're gonna say no again next time
Yeah,
already.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So I think just there's the discomfort of saying no, and then there's the discomfort of not over explaining. So I would say ahead of time, just tell yourself this is probably going to be uncomfortable and I don't need to say more than no, thank you.
And I
Period.
love that you're bringing up that difference of this is gonna happen again, because it may be a genuine, "No, I really can't and I really want to. Please do ask me again," versus "I don't want to now, and I'm definitely not gonna wanna do it next time."
Yeah.
So, recognizing if you can have that shorter no for the things you really please stop asking, the shorter the no, the probably the higher likelihood it's not gonna keep popping up again.
Yes, exactly. And I think
That's a
always
really
just
good point.
telling the truth and telling it kindly. So if it's a no and you really do want to do it later, great. But if you're just saying that because you feel bad, then you're just putting a lie out there and then it's going to come back to you because they're going to ask you to do it again. So the shorter, the better. Tell the truth and tell it kindly. That's what I say.
Yeah, and if you don't like the word no, it can be, "I can't," right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many ways that
Yes,
we
yes,
can
and I
do
think it's
that.
a work in progress like everything. I
Mhm.
mean, I always tell my clients to say, "My life coach says I have to have less on my calendar, so I can't do that." I'm like, "Just blame me until you get comfortable saying, 'I'm trying to reduce my schedule,' or 'My schedule is just as full as I want it to be right now, but thank you." You know, whatever you wanna say, you can just kinda work it down, but feel free to blame me in the meantime.
I love it, and that's I always tell my daughter that too. If you ever get invited to something and you don't wanna go, but you feel bad saying that, always make me the bad guy. You can
Yep.
always say, "My mom said I can't," and act devastated over it and
Yes,
just
yes.
make me the reason that you had to say no.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. And also say like, "I can't do that. My mom will get so mad at me." Even if you don't wanna do it, but somebody's peer pressuring you, just always say,
Yes.
"I'll get in so much trouble from my mom. I definitely can't do that."
We all need
Oh,
that
that's funny.
scapegoat in our lives. I think
Yes,
that's
yes,
great.
exactly. I also think though, I don't know about your daughter, but mine, who's 14, they're much better at these kinds of things than we were. I don't know if it's because 'cause we're raising them differently. Sometimes I think, "Could this girl use a little people pleasing?" You know, she's just like, "I'm not doing that. I don't wanna do that." She'll just tell somebody straight up she doesn't wanna do it, and I'm like,
That's amazing.
"Dang, it is amazing." It really is. I'm joking about the people pleasing, but seriously, I feel like it's a new generation. I'm not saying they won't have the
I hope
problem at
so.
all, but yeah, exactly. I've definitely tried to break the cycle, and I'm sure you have too.
Yes, yes, so
Yeah.
good. Well, Michelle, where can people follow you, learn more about you? You yourself has an amazing podcast as well. I'd love for you to share with our listeners the best place to, be connected in your world.
Sure. Yes. My podcast is called Overwhelmed Working Woman. I'm just remembering that I did a whole episode about just the words you can use to say no. So that might be a useful one for people to
Wonderful.
go listen to. Yes. And then my website is just my name, michellegauthier.com. And from there, you can find my Instagram, how to work with me, anything you want to find, it's there.
Wonderful. And we'll put all that information in the show notes as well. And do you typically work solely one-on-one with individuals or do you do group work as well?
I do both. I do one on
Okay,
one, and
awesome.
then I do a 12-week group coaching program that I launch about 4 times a year.
Awesome. All right, friends, if you know this is a space that you could use support in, please go check Michelle out. Go follow her on the gram. Definitely go look for that podcast episode. We'll see if we can get that one linked to the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your time with us.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun.